one common thing to write about in memoirs is your experience with the big events of our lives. So the big situations. And how do you fit into that? People would write, 70, 80 years ago about being part of the Great Depression. Or what was it like when Kennedy was shot? What is your kind of everyday experience of these big societal events? And one way to write about some of these and adding a little bit of mystery to them is to not come out and say that you're writing about that big event. Instead, let the reader figure it out with really interesting details. And I experienced this, and this is how I came to this idea through a client's story that I read a number of years ago. And I didn't pick up right away what she was writing about. She was just writing about a very detailed account on a trip. And I'm going to go through this story right here on the screen. You can see it there. And you'll see the details. And it wasn't until near the end that I actually started to put it all together. And so if you can create that mystery, of an event that everybody already knows about, but here's your very unique, original, subjective experience of it. And then give them the little details, the crumbs, and lead them along. And then near the end, you spring it on them as to what this event was. That can be kind of an interesting, subtle way of approaching a story that everybody already knows so much about. So in this story, the author, I think she's a teenager at this point. She talks about, and I bolded this myself, how her flight got diverted to Calgary. They were coming from Toronto, Canada. Their flight got diverted due to an apparent network crash in the US. They were trying to get to San Francisco on vacation. They come into the terminal, and then she asks her papa when they can fly back to San Fran, and he doesn't know. Papa laughs and tells me that our plane landed in a city called Calgary, miles and miles away from Toronto. And she gives really rich detail. You can pause this video and read the story if you like and go through it. But I'm not going to read every part of the story. But she gives really interesting detail. As a young person coming into the terminal, she just kind of getting a sense of her surroundings and the people. And then we get another interesting detail. Hefty, buzz-cut men in camouflaged army uniforms, severely pocketed vests, and black combat boots carry heavy assault weapons and stalk shady corners of the large empty terminal. And then there's these ferocious sniffer dogs. So there's some kind of drugs out there, or, they come in to find a drug dealer, that kind of thing. So she's noticing that. Passengers mumble in muffled and confused undertones and so on. Then she notices more armed men guard the entrances. And so on, and she talks about the desolate check-in counters. We're just experiencing things as she goes along and as they're walking around this terminal. And she's kind of grumbling about not being in San Francisco. And she has a little nap for 15 minutes, but it feels like an hour. And more passengers are coming in. People are occupying different corners of the terminal. It's very detailed, so we're really getting a sense of being there. When I always say, live in the moment, try to make it seem like we were actually there, and she's doing a great job of doing that. But then here, airport officials appear from nowhere. So something else is going on here. They run about frantically in their iron suits and polished shoes while they talk on hand-to-hand radios. They say at precise intervals, a recorder recites an insensitive message. Attention passengers, you are advised to be with your luggage at all times. Unattended luggage will be confiscated and destroyed. The armed men close in on the terminal. So there's stress here. We're really feeling it, but we still don't know what it is. But then we get it. A man with a megaphone comes into the crowd and he says, "The reason everyone is gathered here today is that a terrorist attack has taken place in the United States of America. The World Trade Center has collapsed. 2 United Airlines flights crashed into the Twin Towers. All flights going to the U.S. are diverted. Airports in the U.S. are closed. Outgoing flights from Canada are suspended until further notice." So see, that doesn't come till the end. But this is an event, the September 11th terrorist attacks on New York, that pretty much everybody around the world has some sort of experience with. And in this case, she shows how she didn't know right away. And many of us, if we can remember back to that day, at the beginning, we really didn't know what was happening. We were just experiencing it as it goes along. Same here. This author is experiencing things as it happened. Even though, as a writer, she now knows it was September 11th, she puts us back in the mindset of somebody who didn't know what was going on at the moment. And then she has this great line at the end. "I grab my mummy's hand, close my eyes, and think about my lost luggage, the people lost at Calgary, and the lives lost in New York." Very poetic end to that. But when I first read this story, I didn't clue in it was September 11th. Maybe I'm a kind of clueless person, but the details were interesting, and I wanted to know why these people were, these heavily camouflaged army uniform people were there, and the dogs, things like that. And then we get it. That's a very subjective and original way of tying your story to some bigger event that happened that everyone else has experienced.